But it is a real, it's always great to come home. And this is my home, and it's, I'm very proud to be from the Downriver area, and Riverview in particular. And it is a distinct privilege. And I need the mic?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. It is this coming through? Can you hear? It's a privilege to be a part of this scholarship presentation this evening, and part of the Alumni Association. This group, the alumni, the Downriver Alumni Club, is under Bill's very good guidance, has grown significantly since I first came to Michigan, and I'm honored to come and to have you name a scholarship after me. I can tell you that's something that I will always be appreciative for. And you know, we've had a lot of great moments here in the last couple of years. You might be interested, you know, those of you, particularly you students, in 1934 at Michigan, we had a guy that played football there, and he was an All-American. They didn't have a very good season. I think they only won one game. But eventually he went to Congress and then became the President of the United States, Gerald Ford. And and Gerald Ford is, if you've met him or if you've ever seen him, he's in his 80s. And he's a tremendous guy, and a guy with as sharp as a tack. And he comes back to Ann Arbor, comes back to Michigan regularly. And normally, I get a letter from him almost every season. And 2 years ago, he came back, and I had a call. We had just won our 10th game of the season, and we had been moved into the #1 ranking in the country. And so we were getting ready to play Ohio State, which you may or may not know is the absolute biggest game on our schedule. And in that year, it was a game that we were playing and trying to win so that we could win the first national championship in 50 years. And so I got a call from President Bollinger's office on Monday. And the one thing, you know, we meet on Sunday after a game, and we talk about the previous day's game, and then we talk about the next game. And so when we're 10-0, I mean, the pressure is really beginning to build. And so what I'm trying to do with our team is to tell them that, look, this is just another game. And you know, what we have to do to win this game are the same things we've been doing for the last 10 weeks. And the last thing a coach wants during a week, particularly of a big game, are distractions. So I was dismayed when President Bollinger's office called and they said, Gerald Ford, President Ford, would like to come to practice. And I said, well, when does he want to come? And he said, well, he wants to come on Wednesday. Now, Wednesday is the most important day of the week. So, but how do you say no to the president? Now, you understand, when the president comes over, there's Secret Service officers behind the trash barrels, up on top of the roof. They're everywhere. And so it is a distraction. But he came over, and about halfway through the practice, it was a very cold November day. And he came up, and I brought the team together and introduced him to the team. And of course, they knew who he was. And he has a home out in Vail, Colorado, that he lives in the summers, and then he lives in California in the summertime. So he said, you know, I was out in Colorado when you had that opening season win over Colorado. He said, on national television. He said, what a great game. And he said, I saw your comeback win against Iowa where you were down 21-7 at the half. And I saw that great victory down at Penn State 2 weeks ago. He said, but I want you to know, this week you're going to play the most important game in the history of Michigan football. So he didn't do anything to relieve our team of the pressure. He just made it worse than it was. But and then about a year ago at this time, we had an opportunity to go to Washington, to the White House. And, you know, Coach Bo Schembechler, who coached at Michigan from 1969 to 1980, and won, or 1990 and 1989, won the more games than any man in the history of Michigan football. I went down to his office and I said, Bo, I said, we have an opportunity to go to Washington. I said, to go to the White House, visit with President Clinton. I said, why don't you go with us? Now you understand, Bo's a staunch Republican. He said, no, I'm not going, and you shouldn't go either. But we went anyway, and we had a great time. But, you know, the thing that strikes me is about Michigan. When I see all of you, I think there were 7 students here who are going to Michigan next year. And I just want to tell you a couple of things that I think, and those of you who are juniors, who are prospective students at Michigan, I heard a distinguished educator recently talk about the 4 greatest universities in this country. And he said there are 2 that are private, those being Stanford and Harvard. And he said, and there are 2 that are public, the University of California at Berkeley and the University of Michigan at Ann Arbor. And so those of you who have the great fortune to have an opportunity to come to one of the greatest universities in the world. Michigan was founded in 1817, which tells you it's over 180 years old. We have a rich tradition, and in those intervening 170 years, if you visit that campus today, whether it's engineering or law or medicine or business, whatever it may be that you have an interest in, you'll find a school that's ranked in the top 10 in this country. And so I am here to congratulate those of you who have been admitted, who have the great opportunity to go to Michigan. And those of you who are thinking about where you're going to go to school, I can just tell you this: if you have an opportunity to come to Michigan, it will be the greatest experience of your life. That I can promise you. And when you leave, you'll be able to take that diploma and go anywhere in this world and put it down and know that those people are going to be impressed with what you have. And but I would say this to you, several things. Number one, and I always tell the story about 1981, when my second year at Michigan, we went down to the Houston, Texas, to the Bluebonnet Bowl. And one of the things you have an opportunity to do at a bowl game is the host community always takes the team and they entertain them 2 or 3 times during the course of that week. And on this particular night, we had an opportunity to go to the rodeo. Now, most of you are probably just like me. You've never been to a rodeo. And I had never been to one, and neither had most of our players. But they took us to this rodeo, and we got a great seat right down close to that chute. Now, you understand, they put this bull, weighs 2,000 to 3,000 pounds. I mean, it's an incredible thing to see. And this cowboy comes behind him and slips gently down on his back. And then that chute comes up and that bull goes out into that arena, and it's an incredible thing to see this animal try to get rid of this cowboy. And so after the rodeo was over, we had an opportunity to go down and visit with this cowboy. This particular guy had been he was about 35, 36 years old, been a national champion for 10 years. And one of our players asked him, he said, how do you account for the fact that you've been able to be a champion for 10 years in such a difficult sport? And he said, well, you know, it's very simple. He said, every day when I go to get on that bull's back, I remind myself, that bull doesn't give a damn what I did yesterday. And I will tell you this, some of you, John is the valedictorian of his high school. And many of you are in the very, very top of your high schools. And you've achieved wonderful things. But I promise you, when you get to Michigan, nobody cares what you did in high school. The challenge for you is to go in and maintain the same kind of attitude, the same kind of work ethic that it's taken you to achieve what you've achieved thus far. Because you're going to find at a place like that that there are going to be a lot of valedictorians. There are going to be a lot of students who are at the very top of their class. And so what you've achieved, you can have great pride in. But you better be able to ride that bull every single day, because if you want to stay and continue to maintain the things that you've achieved, that's what it's going to take. We had, in football, you know, you talk about, there's a lot of things that go into making a great team. And I'll just tell you a story that about 15 years ago, I took my children to see this movie, Right Stuff. And it is really, it's a 4-hour movie. And from the first part of the movie, it is concerned with the beginning, really, of the space age. And it goes back to Edwards Air Force Base in 1947, where the United States Air Force was trying to beat the Soviets. The Cold War had begun, and we were trying to break the sound barrier. We were trying to get a plane that could fly faster than sound of speed. And so the guy that, if I were to ask you in this room, whom of you have ever heard of a guy named Slick Goodland? Probably not one of you would say that you do, and with good reason. Because you see, Slick Goodland at that time, 1947, was considered the greatest pilot in the United States. And so in this particular October day, the command at the Air Force, at Edwards Air Force Base, they went to, and in the movie, there is a scene in this old bar out in the middle of the desert. And so they approach this bar is a place called Ponchos, and it's where all the pilots went to after hours, and they had some pictures up on the wall there, and the only way you could get your picture on that wall was to die in an air crash. That's how dangerous this whole thing had become. And so on this particular day, in this particular scene in this movie, these commanders of the Air Force Base asked Slick Goodland if he would go up in 2 days because they finally had the plane. They thought that they could break the sound barrier. And so Slick Goodland's answer was this. He said, yes, I'll be glad to do it for $150,000. And so they thought it over, and they decided they didn't have that kind of money to give him. You're the greatest pilot in this country. And they sat down at the table and they said, well, now how are we going to get a guy? Who are we going to get to take this plane up? And the guy says, well, over there in the corner there's a guy that's a pretty good pilot. He says, oh yeah, what's his name? He says, well, his name is Yeager, Chuck Yeager. And so they went over to the corner and they asked this guy, they said, Yeager, we hear you're a pretty good pilot. Would you be interested in going up in this plane? He said, when do we go? They said, 2 days. He said, I'll be there. They said, well, how much money do you make? He said, well, I make $273. He said, is that a week? He said, no, that's a month. And so the rest, of course, here we're standing in Riverview, Michigan, 1999, and Chuck Yeager is now considered probably the greatest pilot of the 20th century. And you never heard of Slick Goodland. And last August, I had an opportunity. I called Chuck Yeager. From the time I saw that movie, he was one of my heroes. And I read about him as much as I can, and I had an opportunity through a friend of mine to get his phone number, and she said, will you call him? He'll be happy to talk to you. So I called him on the phone, and I said, and he answered the phone, Yeager. Now this guy's probably in his late 70s, maybe even his 80s. He flew after that in World War II. He flew in the Vietnam War. Tremendous man. And I said to him, I said, General Yeager, is that story in that movie true? And he said, yeah, Lloyd, it is true. He said, you see, Slick Goodland got greedy. And he said, for me, he said, I was happy because it was my duty. See, today, we don't hear a lot about duty. But Chuck Yeager had the kind of attitude that you need to take to Michigan next fall, you 7 students. And go after it, to have a great attitude, enjoy the opportunity that you have. You see, there are going to be a lot of kids starting college next fall, and some of them are not going to be appreciative of the opportunity they have. And they will be those people who do not make it. Wherever, and it'll be happening all throughout this country, at every college and every state. But you don't want that to happen to you. You have the greatest opportunity any young person could ever want. And you have here the people who put this program on. The University of Michigan is the largest living alumni body in the world. And so appreciate the opportunity you have and make the most of it. Good luck to you. It's great to be here. I hope you get an opportunity to say hello to you. I had told Bill, unfortunately, I have a plane to catch at 9:20, so I'm not going to be here too long, but I do appreciate the Alumni Club and what you've done and what you do, because what makes Michigan special is the spirit of that body. The people, if you've ever been to a game in Michigan Stadium, you know that when it's a great day and things are going well, that crowd, there's no greater crowd in all the world. And it's that love for Michigan that is so special about that university. So, you 11th graders, you ride that bull every day this year, and next year you'll be back here. You will have been admitted to Michigan, and you'll be the luckiest kids in the world. But it's great to be here. Thanks so much, and go Blue. My friend Al Whited here. See Al, thank you. Great educator here. I guess Bill asked me to take some questions. I'll take any question except as it regards the quarterback at Michigan. Anyone have a question?
I won't ask a question about the quarterback, but what are the criteria you're going to use for making a decision?
Well, I think you may or may not know. We have a from a coaching standpoint, we have and a team standpoint, we have a tremendous situation this fall at quarterback at Michigan. We have a young guy named Tom Brady, who last year, after sitting on the bench for 3 years, you understand success doesn't come overnight, and when it does, you're very lucky. But for Tom Brady, he sat on that bench for 3 seasons and watched Brian Greasy, Scott Dreisbach, and other people play quarterback at Michigan. Came to practice every day for 3 years, in the fall and in the spring and in the summer, and he worked hard. And last year, finally, he had an opportunity to become the starter. And he did what no quarterback in my memory at Michigan has done. He led his team to the Big Ten championship. And a great win on New Year's Day in a bowl game. And so this kid is so smart, so tough, so competitive, that he's a coach's dream. And then last fall to Ann Arbor came probably the most gifted and talented athlete that we've ever had recruited as a quarterback. His name is Drew Henson. And Drew Henson wants to be that starting quarterback too. And in this past year, he got a chance to play some, but in this past spring, he really began to emerge and play with all of the ability we expected to play with. So we have a great race there between 2 tremendous young people. So what we'll do is this. We decide who the quarterback is at Michigan based on, number 1, most important, who gives our team the best chance to win. That's how we make it. And we have to be as fair as we can, and yet, fairness is not always, something that is easily judged. But that's going to be probably in my coaching career, maybe in my life, one of the toughest decisions that I'll ever have to make. because I love those kids. But that's the way we'll do it, and hopefully the guy that doesn't get chosen will take his role and do the best that he can with it. Yes?
What about your defensive back? Quickly gone and all this stuff, you know.
Well, you know, we got 120 kids on the team at Michigan. So nobody said Michigan is perfect. And we have kids that get in trouble just like you do. Are you a father?
I am.
You probably had kids get in trouble. And so
My sons go to U of M.
what we do, well, that doesn't mean they didn't get in trouble. But I have 2 kids that go to Michigan too. But the real issue is that we take any position, and we'll have 23 freshmen coming in the fall, freshman football players, and some of them will get an opportunity to play because maybe somebody else didn't take advantage of an opportunity. Anyone else? None of you students? If you're from Downriver, when I see that dean's list next December, I expect to see you on it. Yes.
Do you ever get phone calls from like Brian Greasy, some of the players that you've played with, getting advice on different?
I talked to Brian Greasy. The question is, do I ever get phone calls from ex-guys that have played and gone on? Quite a bit. I talked to Brian about a month ago. Brian was drafted by the Denver Broncos, and you know, there's an unbelievable story. There's a guy who came to Michigan without a scholarship. Now, you talk about following your dream. I just talked to a young student over there that was interested in engineering. John has mentioned he's going to study engineering. Engineering is as tough as it gets, because you know, you get there back to your room at night, you start working on a math problem. It may take you 2 hours to solve it, and then you get 5 more to do. But you know, it's a task. You have to have a great passion, a great love for what you're doing if you're going to succeed in anything. But Brian Greasy came to Michigan in spite of the fact that other schools offered him a scholarship. And so you can imagine what the other schools, they said, are you crazy? They don't think enough of you to give you a scholarship at Michigan. We're offering you a full scholarship. But Brian Greasy, you see, had a dream, and that dream was to go to Michigan, to get a degree. He's an outstanding student. He graduated with a 3.4 GPA in LS&A, and as a matter of fact, won a $20,000 postgraduate scholarship from the National Football Foundation. So whatever money he didn't get that first year, he's made up with a postgraduate scholarship. But Brian Greasy, at the end of his 4th year, I'll never forget this. Now, we got all these writers, you know, all these sports writers who think they know everything. And so there was one writer up there that wrote that Brian Greasy wasn't good enough to be the quarterback at Michigan. He might as well just not come back for his 5th year. Imagine. Brian Greasy did come back, just like he came to Michigan. He came back for his 5th year. And he led Michigan to a national championship, something that hadn't been done for 50 years. See, his legacy is going to live as long as that great football program continues. Because he didn't listen to people who told him he couldn't do something or he wasn't good enough. And that's the other thing you have to fight. You're going to always have people who tell you you can't do this and you can't do that. And if you listen to them, you won't. So don't listen to them. Anything else? All right, Bill, we're all
being here, and your job is over yet.
Oh, no.
All right.
John Priskorn, you want to step up? And before we introduce John, and I tell you a little bit about him, you know, John has a lot to be thankful for, but probably 4 people that I have listed down here are your grandparents. You want to introduce them? Or how is their name? Or their...
All right, they're seated at the table right there. My grandma Ann Gogolia, my grandma Barbara Van Zandt, my grandpa Carl Van Zandt, and my grandma Donna Van Zandt.
Come stand up there, please.
Gene started there, and then they proceeded over here. Betty and Mike Priskorn, and John's parents. We want to stand up for. Okay, if you haven't guessed, John is the recipient of the first Lloyd Carr Scholarship. And it started out with 200 students being admitted to the University of Michigan, either Dearborn or Ann Arbor. 35 took the trouble to fill out an application. And through a process where we had a committee of 10 or 11 people, we narrowed that down to 15, and then had them come to a meeting, and we broke that down through a series of questions and interviews to 2, and finally to 1, and that was John. Now, as I mentioned to the original 14 candidates that showed up in person, I said, there aren't any losers in this room, you know, but we only have one $1,000 scholarship at this time. In the future, we could have more. So I did encourage the other 13 to apply for other scholarships that our club gives to sophomore and upperclassmen at the university. So keep that in mind, and keep us in mind as we go on. But John, I think everyone felt in selecting the winner, rose to the top because of his achievements as valedictorian of Riverview High School, in the honors program, president of his class, co-president of the National Honor Society. I could go on and on and on, but I'm just very honored and proud to turn the mic now over to Lloyd so he can make the actual presentation of the scholarship.
Okay. The University of Michigan Club of Downriver, the 1999 Lloyd Carr Scholarship for Scholastic and Community Achievement while a high school student. Proudly awarded to John Priskorn, May 11, 1999, for the University of Michigan Club, Downriver.
I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the members of the Downriver U of M Club, especially all the members who took their time out of their schedules to do the interviews. I'd like to thank my parents and family, and I'd like to thank Mr. Carr for taking time out of his commuting time to be with us tonight. During my interview, I had the chance to meet some of the other applicants, and I was extremely impressed with everyone. It makes you realize what high standards the University of Michigan has and what an achievement it is just to be accepted into the university. And for all the juniors here, obviously you're here, you're on the right track. All I can say is keep up the hard work and keep working hard your senior year, and it's all going to pay off someday. Thanks.